Hello and welcome to another macro video. I'm sorry it's been such a long time since you've heard from me. It was back in December last year when I produced the last one, and because of that I've got a lot of new macros that I want to tell you about, but I have been rather busy with other things, including doing a lot of my own writing. I've been writing about my Christian faith, and some of you have expressed interest, and you can find out about that if you're interested. But because I've spent such a long time working on that, I haven't been able to write up the macros that I've actually generated. And so what I want to do today is to tell you about the two most important macros and then give you an idea of what else is available, and you can ask me about it perhaps by email. So I want to start today by looking at two macros in particular. HyphenAlyse and WordPairAlyse. And the point about you probably know HyphenAlyse, but the point about WordPairAlyse was when I was doing my last job, I noticed that the author was using shockwave as two words and as one word, and then there was load path and load path as a single word. So I was thinking, well, I wonder if there are any others, and it would be good if I could use the equivalent of HyphenAlyse to find out if there are any other such inconsistencies. But with HyphenAlyse it's easy because you just look for hyphens. If you want to look at the word pairs like these, then you've got to look at every single pair of words in the whole document and see if that pair of words also occurs as a single word, and that's a big programming task. I did try and do it about 4 or 5 years ago, but gave up because it was all just too slow, whereas I decided to have another crack at it, and because of all the programming techniques I've built up in those 4 or 5 years, I have actually managed to produce a working macro for this particular analysis. So when I applied it to the job that I had finished, just finished, unfortunately I found quite a lot of inconsistencies, but you'll be happy to hear that I hadn't actually sent the documents back to the client, so I was able to go back and correct some of these inconsistencies. So here we go, we've got backup card reader. So it shows you the pairs of words and tells you how many times they occur, the same sort of idea as with HyphenAlyse. So there's your even though I'd recognised that shockwave was a problem, I hadn't actually been consistent in changing them all. So the new macro, WordPairAlyse, that gives you some idea of how fast it is. So for a 160,000 words file, it'll take you about an hour and a half. Well, that's on the desktop computer I've got here, which is probably about 6 or 8 years old. So on a modern, more powerful machine, then it might take less than that. But it gives you an idea, and it's worth waiting for because you can spot all these different missed inconsistencies. So having created that and worked out some new techniques in doing so, I thought, well, I could apply that back to HyphenAlyse. Because of the different analysis macros, HyphenAlyse is probably about the slowest. So I had a go at HyphenAlyse, and you may recognise the output it produces, the table of results. So it's checking hyphenated words and when they occur as two words and when they occur as a single word, and telling you how many times each of those occurs. And as you can see, it will, if it only occurs there just as, say, a hyphenated word and not in any other form, then it's not that important, so the macro grays out that one. But something like above mentioned and as a hyphenated or a single word, then that's important because that's almost certainly an inconsistency, and therefore that's highlighted in red. But things like band pass, did the band pass on the left hand side of the road, or this is a bandpass filter, so one will be hyphenated and the other not, so that's probably not an inconsistency. But while I was doing this, I thought, well, why don't I extend it? So what I've done is added a fourth column now, so it also checks when a pair of words are separated by an n dash. So you've got a blue-green algae or whatever. And the other thing I've also added is that although if it's just the words are just in the first two columns, and I don't highlight them in red, if you've got an adverb, an ly adverb, then the chances are that that is going to be an inconsistency, and therefore I have highlighted the ly words on there. So what about speed? Well, the techniques have made HyphenAlyse faster, but the extra facilities I've added to it have made it slower again, so it's about the same sort of speed as it was before, I'm afraid, and so it's still not fast, but it's faster than WordPairAlyse, but it is giving you extra facilities which I hope you'll find useful. So those two macros are already written up and they are in my book. However, I've got a lot of other macros that I've written either for myself or for other people who've requested them, but I haven't had time to put them in the book yet. I've been keeping a note of them so that eventually I can put them in, but I haven't yet found the time. So I've got a list of them. So what I'm going to do now is to quickly go through the list and give you a vague idea of what they are, and then if any of those is of any particular interest to you, do please email me, and that will give me a motive to actually write it up and put it in the book and make it available to other people. So let's see what we've got. There are 28 of them, in fact. Right, so comment initials. Right, so if you've got initials in comments, so if you add a comment then you get an initial there. Those initials can be changed. There's a find and replace program here which will go through and change, so you could change PB to RA or somebody else, and you can do it either just specifying change this into this, so like an ordinary single find and replace, or replace all where it changes every single initial to whatever it is. Style detector, that checks the style and either just displays it or it will actually speak it, so that you can, without taking your view off the screen, you can just find out what the style is. So next one, table borders. Yes, if you want to switch the borders on and off on a table, then there's one macro which will switch them on if they're off and vice versa. Step through the tables, so allows you to look at if you need to look at all the different tables in the document, then you can step through them one by one and just quickly go through them and look at them, compare them, whatever you need to do. Font color reader, so you can have a style with a font color, and you can apply colors to, that's a highlight, sorry, you can add a color to it, and so if something is colored either because the style is colored or because a color has been added, then this macro will tell you. Capitalize, undouble it. Yes, that's where you've done something like FINDS, so it goes through and takes out double capitals back to a capital followed by a lowercase. Search these words. That's the idea of that is that suppose you're looking for references to some particular idea, and there might be 3 or 4 words that you would want to use, or that might have been used in the text. You can put those words into the macro. Let's just have a quick look at it. So if I load it up, I can do that with, there it is, and edit it. So it's set up at the moment to look for and, or, but, so, yet, if. So it's looking for conjunctions. So it's looking through all the conjunctions. So whatever it is, whatever the words are that you're wanting to look for, then you can look for them in there. Yeah, so if any of those, it jumps to the next occurrence of any of those words. Text to number. That's where you've got numbers that are expressed in words and you want to convert them to figures. So if it says 142, then you run the macro and it changes it into 142. But of course there are all sorts of different formats for the way numbers are produced. So there are about 6 or 7 macros actually. So there's text number 1, text number 2. There's just different ones. So like an American one might say 142. So whereas Brits would say 142. So those need different ways of converting them to figures. Bold first occurrence. I can't remember quite what that does. Oh yes, you create, if you have a list of words and you want to know when that word first occurred in the document and embolden it, then you put the list of words, run the macro, and it goes through the list and finds the first occurrence of each of those words and makes it bold within the text. Merriam fetch, Merriam, sorry, not Miriam. So that's like OUP fetch and Google fetch and so on. You highlight a word. So if it's a OUP fetch, so you just click it and up comes your browser and with the OUP dictionary with that word website there. So go away. So this is for the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Captions or list, generates a list of all the paragraphs that contain the word figure, table or box in bold. So in other words, it's all the captions. I mean, when I do captions, I tend to use the tagging, so they will all say they will have a tag in front of them, so I can find them from that. But if you haven't got that, you've just got the word figure 6.2, figure 6.3, whatever. If it's in bold, then this will list all of those captions. Para split joint, so that's if you want to split, suppose that line there wants to be split to a new line like that, then you would put the cursor in the word after and then run the macro and it will split that into 2 lines. But if you click in the word at the end of the paragraph, then what that will do is will pull up the next paragraph into and make it part of this paragraph. So that's quite a neat way if you're editing text and just wanting to split paragraphs or join them, then that's quick and easy, because of course it adds or takes away the space as well. Highlight select. Oh yes, it runs through the text to find the next piece of highlighted text. So if you're wanting to look at the highlights, and then it actually selects it. Yeah, that's right. And then select previous piece of text. Highlighted text. Oh, can't spell. Look, missed an H out. Small caps. Yeah. So that's where just somebody said I've got a lot of words that are in small caps and I need to change them to an initial capital followed by lowercase. So that just goes through the whole file, finds all the small cap words and initializes the first letter. You can't do that, or capitalizes, sorry. You can't do that with a find and replace, because find and replace can only capitalize a whole thing that you find. So that's it has to be done by a macro. Jumping in and out of comments, if there's a comment, if you're in the text and you want to jump to a comment, into the comment to type in there, run the macro and it goes into the comment. If you're in the comment and you run the macro, it jumps out of the comment into the main text for typing. Just another sort of speed thing. Highlights paragraphs with too many sentences. Yeah, someone said they wanted to highlight any paragraphs that had more than 3 sentences or something. So it's just trying to split. It's just trying to tell you that some of the paragraphs are too long. This was the next one. Numbers add listing. So it's adding numbers to a macro listing, and what that does is it's for me when I was talking about the macros, doing the programming videos, I was able to add some index numbers to all the lines of the program, so that I could say, oh, if you look at line 32 and it does this, and line 35 does that, and so on. What's this? Highlight with track change. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure why this was one. It was this again. Someone asked me to do. They said, could you change all yellow highlighted things to all caps, all green highlighted things to small caps, and all something else highlighted text into underline? And so I did. Insert heading reference. Yeah, if you have a citation of a heading or a figure or a table, then these will add a hyperlink reference to it, a citation to it, I suppose you call it. Borders, find up and down. Yeah, finding the next paragraph that's got borders around it. So it's various bits of text in the document that had borders around, and you just want to go from one to the next, or back up again in the case of find up. HyphenAlyse, it tells you what sorts of fields you've got in the document. Some of them may be URLs, some of them may be links to figures, some of them may be equations, because equations are fields, and so this just tells you how many you've got of each of them. Formatting number at cursor. This one is for, I didn't realise you could do this. There is a way of formatting there we go. There's a way of setting up a format, so you'd have 3 numbers, comma, 3 numbers, comma, 3 numbers, comma, and a decimal point, and then this is a different way of formatting it, and that's just a facility that Word provides to format into those styles, and I basically just used that so that you click in a number, run the macro, and it gives you that particular format. So if it's a number with a whole string of digits that are not separated with commas, this will separate them, and if it's got a decimal point, then it will give you the 2 decimal points as well, and I think it truncates to that as well. So if it's got more decimal points than that, it will truncate it to 2 decimal points. And last, highlight uneditable equations. Yes, I had, the job I just finished had some equations in them that had been converted into uneditable pictures, so they're bitmaps, and obviously those had to have the original equations, which came from a previous edition of the book, had to have those pasted back in by the typesetter. So to help the typesetter, I wrote this macro which went through the whole document, found all the uneditable documents, uneditable equations, and put a highlight on them. Okay, so that's it. So if you want to get in touch about any of those, you can email me, and I will write up the macro that you're interested in and put it in the book. Okay, so that's all for now. So there's the email address to write to. Okay, thanks for watching.